Hey, welcome to the Operational Reset Podcast. Look, this podcast is brought to you by the Tactical Resilience Training System. And at the heart of this system is the Operational Reset Stack. This is a method that you use, simple, tactical, and practical tools on duty in pairs, in stacks, to help you reset and go from stress situation to reset so that your baseline resilience can increase. If you're interested in that, go to joeswansontactical.com. You can find that program or come to one of my live workshops being held all around the country. joeswansontactical.com also has that schedule and a place for you to sign up. So I'm so excited. You know, I was teasing on Instagram. You can find me on there, Joe Swanson Tactical. I was teasing in my stories yesterday, Packy, that I have some incredible guests coming up on this podcast, and you're one of them, man. You know, we got connected, I think, through Instagram, and, you know, we quickly jumped on a conversation on the phone just to get to know each other, and you told me your story, and it is one of resilience. It's one of just a incredibly high stakes experience that you fortunately came through, and there's so much that we can learn from it, man. And so I appreciate you being here. My guest today is Jack Packy Dempsey, and he is former law enforcement officer, canine officer, SWAT commander. Like, you did a bunch of stuff in your career, and we'll get into some of that, but I want to kick this thing off with a bang, and I want you to, no pun intended, and I want you to tell a little bit of your story, the fastest 4 seconds, where that came from, and that experience that you had, this critical incident that you went through. And so if you could just share a little bit of that and give some context to this conversation we're going to have.
All right. Cut me off anytime I start running and get on a path there. But
bring it. We got time. We got time.
December the 7th, 1994, another day of infamy. Received a call. I went home for lunch. All the deputies were tied up, and they defaulted to the narcotics division, which I had a canine, and the call came in gambling, skipping schools, shooting guns, just a normal call for that high stake project area. We had received somewhere around 200 calls that year, so it was just like, here's another call, just go down there, take care of it. I approach the intersection or the cul-de-sac with my truck, and all the males ran off. So I radioed in, said, hey, they all left, but I'm going to stick around a minute. And stuck around a few more minutes, made the cul-de-sac. Then, again, nobody ran off. So I radioed I'd be out of the car, activated my recently purchased dash camera. My dog was in the back seat, barking as she had been trained to do. I approached the males, said, hey guys, go back to school, go back home, find somewhere else to hang out. And I knew them all except one, and I could see him standing there with a piece of plastic between his finger and thumb. And when I asked him what his name was, he put it in his pocket. He never answered me. He never said a word the whole time. And I said, hey, what's your name? He wouldn't tell me. He started walking off slowly, and I started walking with him outside the view of the camera. And I ended up saying, hey man, let me pat you down. And he rose his hands up. I made a huge mistake. First mistake I made of many was I patted him down from the front. I checked his waistband for a weapon. Like we worked street level narcotics. We did this day in, day out, street corner to street corner. Crack cocaine was big at the time, and we were trying to get a handle on it. And I patted the pocket, and there was nothing there. So I reached in the pocket, and there was a hole in the pocket. So I was like, So I shook his pants legs, and the crack fell out the bottom. He began to run. I grabbed him by the arm and said, relax, you're under arrest, it's over. As soon as I got him by the arm, he went for my firearm on my right side, SIG P220. We went to the ground. He got on top of me. I could hear the other guys, or makeshift gang guys, wannabe gang guys, coming in. They were telling me what they were going to do to me, and I had donated to the sheriff's office a new up-and-coming thing called a bailout system. They hit the bailout system. The dog came out. The crowd ran off. She knocked the subject off of me, and he didn't know what had hit him. So I went to take the upper hand, and you'll see us go from out of the view to in the view of the camera, and a total of a 1 minute struggle ensued. I didn't know, as I was trying to handcuff him and get the call out on the radio, I didn't know that he was trying to get my gun. My belt had shifted a little bit during the struggle. The canine was giving him a hard time. She was mostly narcotics, but we just started this new thing called a patrol dog in our area. We're from Selma, Alabama, home of the 1965 racial marches, so we had to be careful about using the dog, but it was bad. So I went ahead and released the dog. The dog actually bit me a couple times, so I'm fighting the crowd, I'm fighting the suspect, I'm having to tell the dog to re-engage. The radio is being demanding. What's going on? You know, there's units coming. The trooper post was only about 300 yards away, but it took them some time to get there because of all the cul-de-sacs. As I looked out my left eye, I could see a gun appear, and I thought, man, I missed that in the pat down. Well, the dog came in and he struck the dog in the ground and caused a stovepipe neither one of us knew about. And he began pulling the trigger, telling me I was going to die. I could hear the trigger hitting the housing, and I thought, he must have the safety on. It looks like a Beretta. The barrel was sticking out oddly. My training kicked in. I could see my family. There was a picture that was wrote around on the dash of my car. I could see my wife and kid, first day of kindergarten, and I thought, I'm never going to see them again, and somebody else is going to walk her down the aisle. And I could literally feel the breath of my instructor saying, are you just going to lay there? I got up, reached for my primary weapon twice. It wasn't there. You see me look down on the camera, very puzzled, realizing I'm fixing to have to use deadly force. My gun is missing. I carried a backup weapon hidden on my gun belt. I drew it, fired 5 rounds, center mass, 21 feet, all the statistics of a police officer, and the tunnel vision went away. The suspect began to run away. What I thought, well, I missed him because he just took off running. And I looked behind him, and there was the 6 other guys, and they began to run. And I thought, if I missed him, where did those rounds go? So I gave a foot chase, a little short foot chase. He fell over in the wood, over in some bushes. As me and the dog approached, he turned with a gun and pulled the trigger, and I recognized it to be my gun. The dog engaged. I was able to force the gun away, clear it, turned toward the crowd, turned her toward the crowd. It was growing by the second, and had a few choice words. Asked me over a cup of coffee, I'll tell you what I said. But it kept them off of me. I went back to my radio that I had lost and went 00 on the radio. It took about a minute and a half for the first officers to arrive, and things began to go south from there.
Go south from there. Wow. I mean, did you, kind of circling back to the very beginning, this was a standard routine call. You hear that, people who are listening to this podcast right now.
Nothing's ever routine. But
nothing's ever routine.
That's how I took it, you know.
Exactly. And this is, we hear this a lot, but we get complacent in our idea that it's just some kids skipping school, gambling, whatever. It was routine in your mind. Did you have any, that sixth sense as you were going there or anything, or it was just kind of cold walking into this thing?
I mean, it was close to a 15-minute ride. I actually stopped and talked to a fellow investigator on the way to the call.
Wow.
So it wasn't like I was running lights and siren. I was just going down there to do what the dispatcher asked me to do.
Right.
Just run them off. The people are tired of them being between the houses.
Right, right. So you go there, and it turns just like that. Again, this is something so important for us to like think about. And if you're out on patrol, I remember having that feeling, like sort of making this mental shift at the beginning of briefings, sometimes in the locker room as I was getting the vest on and putting myself together. You're making this mental shift that I have to be aware. I know if something happens, how much blood I can lose. We're replaying these things. I'm going to fight. I remember those instructors saying, "Don't let them kill you on some dirty highway."
That's right.
Right. And you just set this mindset, and people wonder, well, why is that cop so tense? It's because of this type of situation. This can happen in a matter of seconds, where we are fighting to have the privilege of walking our daughter down the aisle years from now.
The incident struggle lasted for 1 minute, and the whole time I said, I got this. I wrestled in high school. I was in excellent shape. We did this every day for a living, and it turned deadly on camera in around 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Right. He got you. One of the first questions that I had for you when we talked about it, and you kind of laid this story out to me the first time, was what did it make you think, like post experience, right? You're safe now. People are in custody that need to be in custody. You're reflecting on this. The question I asked was, what did it make you think about your equipment that you were using? And did it shift your idea of what equipment you should use? Because your gun belt shifted, right? The keepers didn't keep it where it was supposed to be.
Nothing was where it was
right.
supposed to be. So
chaos. Talk a little bit about that. What was the mindset afterwards? And then obviously we're going to circle back to some of these moments, but I want to hear kind of that initial, like, I've had some time to reflect on this, and there were some things that went real wrong, and how can I adjust in the future for that?
Well, of course, someone in the community bought security holsters for us. Safari Land was the latest and the greatest that was out there. It was just coming online. They bought us the security holster. Had I had that day, things would have definitely been different. I had more training in ground contact. I almost lost my life because I didn't fire my rounds from the ground. My training told me, stand up, get in the semi-wiver stance, take the gun out of your left hand, place it in your right hand, front sight, trigger press. All that was wasted time. Lack of training almost cost me, but the training I had saved me.
So talk a little bit about that. What was the part of the training that saved you, that you think, because you're right, some of that stuff was impractical, time-wasting training that we get reps in. This is why it's so important to get the proper reps in, the proper training that has been time-tested and through these types of scenarios. So you bring a great wisdom of experience out of that. Yeah. What was the training that worked for you?
The training that worked for me, I was an FBI and NRA firearm instructor. So I had that confidence that when I fired, I would fire center mass. I was very confident in my firearm. I was very confident in hand-to-hand, because that's what we did going from street corner to street corner.
Right.
We fought every day, and I was very confident in it. From my being in shape, I was the canine officer, so I was who they called when things were bad. So I had a certain amount of training with the dog but there was no way at the time to come up with the training we had trained on the sleeve, and some of the training was we would let the dog bite, fight for 10 seconds, give them the sleeve, and let them go back to the car. We had just started training to out on one sleeve and bite another sleeve. That training, instead of her tearing the clothes off that you see in the video, she didn't just run to the car because that's her training. We had started teaching to re-engage, and that saved my life.
Wow. So just that little bit of work around that one particular thing, training the dog, which again, this can be about training a canine. It can also be in other aspects of your training. Doing one small little shift can mean the difference between life and death. You know, I'm doing a workshop with connected with Precision Resilience Training Group up in Reno, firearms instructors up there, and we are doing a reactive pistol proactive mindset. Precision under pressure is the name of the workshop. So what they're going to teach in their courses of fire is how to get out of holster, on target, center mass in less than a second and a half, right? At that threshold of it takes somebody a second and a half to get 21 feet with a weapon, an edge weapon, or get hands-on with you. And so can you as a patrol officer get out on target in that a period of time? And then what we're going to do is take these operational reset stacks for high activation, reaction time, focus, and decision clarity. And we're going to apply those operational reset stacks to the courses of fire. Now, it's going to be incredibly cool to see people go from first half of the day where they're training this stuff to second half of the day where they can unlock some working memory, unlock some better reaction time by using some of this nervous system regulation tools that I teach in these operational reset stacks. That's happening May 9th. If anybody's interested, go to Precision Resilience website and get signed up for that, because this is tip of the spear stuff. Like, you know, where you're talking about, hey, you know, we had to start implementing some tip of the spear training with the dog and with our thought around firing. Oh, I can fire from the ground. How many officers have fired from the ground? Have you done 20 push-ups, put yourself on your ass, and fired rounds downrange?
That's right. Have you exceeded your beat of 175% or 175 beats per second that your fingers don't work after that? Are you in shape enough to be able to do that task? And I do that demonstration in my classes. And
yeah, you were telling me about this. Yeah. Talk about that. Tell your experience doing this, putting officers under extreme pressure. Physical fatigue plus mental fatigue creates what?
Well, I have them do 1 minute of push-ups, which pretty much simulates the 1 minute struggle, but they don't have the psychological of the crowd. They don't have your mind going, I'm fixing to get sued. This is bad. My dog is not quite acting like I want her to. The suspect is saying things to you about what he's going to physically do to you. But I do let them do 1 minute of push-up and try to write their name. And they're in the academy at the best of their ability, and they still have trouble because they write their name before the push-ups and then try to rewrite it. And there's a huge comparison. I'm just showing, your finger, well, you lose your fingers at 175 beats per second. So that's part of my class, is just an illustration.
Yeah, I love it. It would be super interesting to do that, right? Have them write their name at baseline, have them write their name at 175 beats per minute heart rate, so elevated heart rate, simulating that stressful experience, and then have them reset for a time, come back and do it again, increase that heart rate, and utilize one of the high activation operational reset stacks to see where they can affect that heart rate, how quickly they can affect it, how quickly they can affect their fine motor skills. And we talked about doing a collaborative workshop at some point. I think that would be super fascinating and really a lot of fun to do.
But I also make them write their name in 4 seconds. There's a timer that goes off, so they can't just go up there and catch their breath and begin to get their act together. They got 4 seconds to write their name just like they did prior to. And even the best of the best in the academies don't make it. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's a reality check, right? It's a real reality check to what can I do in the time that while I'm elevating my heart rate, and then from the time I get up and walk to the board in those 3 seconds or 2 seconds that I am moving to that board prior to having to conduct this task in 4 seconds, what can I do to help myself? And it's super interesting. What was the, was there a moment, or when was the moment afterwards that you started to, or what did it feel like afterwards? So the cavalry starts showing up, everybody and their brothers showing up. What's the feeling at that time?
oddly enough, I knew he had died because I reached my hand under his head and asked him what his name was. He still didn't tell me. Blood came from his mouth and his head fell over. And that wasn't my major concern. My major concern was what was my probable cause. And I started searching frantically for the crack. People are walking through the crime scene. Officers are walking through the crime scene. They actually caught the media in the crime scene.
Wow.
So they looking for the crack. I was like trying to that was where my mindset was, to try to justify my actions here. I didn't think twice about the camera. I actually forgot about it. My supervisor put me in the front seat of the car, and I was like, the camera's running. It was fairly new at the time. My buddy from another agency physically had to pick me up because I lost my sight. I couldn't hear. I couldn't speak. The adrenaline was beginning to leave, and I was thinking, I'm losing it. I got to stay here to tell him what happened. And he's like, no, we're leaving. And I was like, no, we need to stay. And he said, we're leaving. And they had taken both my guns at the scene, so I felt defenseless. I talk about that in the academy. Don't be that guy. Take your gun and give it to him. But he handed me a gun in the car, made me feel a little better, took me to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I was sore for days from a 1-minute struggle.
Right. Yeah, from that huge adrenaline dump and the physical activity. I mean, it just goes to show you how important physical conditioning and mental conditioning is. You mentioned that when you were telling the story about what's my admin going to think? Man, this is not good. Where do you think that comes from? Because I think I talked to thousands of officers on Instagram, LinkedIn, and other capacities in person. And there is something that's happening in law enforcement. I think it's happened for many, many years, that there's this disconnect, us versus them, admin versus patrol. I don't trust them. I just did a reel, do you trust your admin? Majority, no. I've never trusted them. Where do you think that came from for you? And then the follow-up question to that I want to dig into is, what can we do about that?
Well, of course, most agencies have a problem child, and the first thing they do is promote them and take them off the street. And then,
Why do you think that, Packy? Why do you think that is? You're promoting somebody that's having issues. Why not deal with the issues at the street level, and instead of putting them now in charge of the street level. Like, that seems so bass-ackwards to me.
But it's true, and people on this podcast will email me and text me and like, man, that happened to me. They promoted because of the gender, because that person couldn't handle the street. They promoted because of the color of their skin, because they needed their numbers higher. And the bottom guys are really struggling. You know, you got enough from the bad guys, but you got to deal with administration that has no idea. They haven't been there. They hadn't bought the T-shirt. They have no idea what you're going through.
Right. Yeah. They, I talk about this where, you have administrators who have street amnesia, and I've had a few comments that said they don't even have street amnesia. They've never even been on the street.
That's right.
And it is a huge problem in law enforcement, whether it's truly happening that way or not. If the perception is there that you have this person being promoted for reasons other than their capacity to lead, then you are going to be pulling, talk about trust deposits, making deposits of trust in the trust bank. And you're pulling that currency, that trust currency out of your team's bank account every moment you do that. And what do you think? And look, there's always a flip side to the coin, right? I talk to a lot of chiefs and a lot of sheriffs and a lot of administrators who are absolutely ready to share in that pressure and share in that danger with their teams.
That's right.
So don't get me wrong. And I had some of those. I worked for some of those folks.
That's right.
And so what do you think we can do about this, Packy? This us versus them mentality within this thin blue line?
There's really not much you can do about it, but you can rise to the occasion, even though you fall to the level of your training. And there's a difference in training and what happens in the real world.
Yeah.
Your department can provide you with so much, but the rest of it's left up to you. And I always was, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And I was always attracted to that slick sleeve that had 25 of those yellow marks on his sleeve. He'd been there, done that. That's the guy I want to talk to. He just didn't have the want to lead. And your relationship with your mid-level supervision is tough because they feel like they got to show you, and in actuality, they need to be paying attention to you. I told my troops every day as a street sergeant, I was like, they'd say, "What we're going to do today, Sarge?" I said, "You're going to protect and serve. I'm going to take care of you to make sure you can do the job." And I won my team over with being the first there and the last to leave. And we're losing that. And but there's hope for America. Somebody's going to change something somewhere. And I was blessed. I had supervision. The higher-up Vietnam veterans, been there, done that, super people. The midline was, they were always the armchair quarterback. And I really don't know the solution, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts when you are on patrol and you lead where your 2 feet stand. I talk about this in my workshop. I talk about this on Instagram. Lead where your 2 feet stand. Rank is an action. Or leadership is an action, not a rank.
That's right.
Right.
It's a privilege.
And it's a privilege. And so you take ownership. Why is my team getting into trouble? Well, it's because I'm not leading them. It's my problem,
buddy, because they're watching your every move, move, everything you say. I would say also, like, from a patrol standpoint, how much are you, instead of complaining about your shit show of an admin, how much ownership are you taking around your actions to lead? To lead by example, to show them how a leader can move and operate, even on patrol. And so, can you influence them? Or are you just going to sit back and talk about how bad it is?
So this is another thing that I think really there needs to be some shift and influence happening around those people who, one, are willing to step up in that patrol environment and lead, whether you are the sergeant, the FTO, or you got 2 weeks on the job. You can lead with qualities that put that out. And then when the opportunity comes, you hear this is, are you going to put your name in the hat? Are you going to put your name in the hat for that position so that you can effectively show that, yes, we can do it at this level, we can do it at this level, and all the way up, we can do it. We can lead by example and take ownership. And I think that's hard for somebody, some people who don't have maybe that desire or inclination to lead, but they would be the leader that people would follow.
Right.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about the relationship with the dog. You had a canine at that time. It was a drug dog, but you had started doing some, protection training with the dog. Talk about that relationship, because I know that was a special dog for you. You had him before, right? You came into law enforcement and turned him into a canine officer.
Well, I'd gotten the dog at 6 weeks old prior to being in law enforcement, but I was a reserve deputy at the time. Spent 3 years in that, and I learned a lot as a reserve, and they got to learn a lot about me. The sheriff was big into dogs. We had 40 bloodhounds, a couple beagles, we had some horses. And somebody escaped. We came back with our guy, and we worked him out of the jail, and he called me in and said, hey, talk to this person about making a thing called a drug dog. I need you to go out there and figure it out. And so I did, through a lot of trial, a lot of error, and it all boiled down to them that 1 minute. She did exactly as she trained, and I get hate mail. You should have had this type of dog. You should have had that type of dog. The dog wasn't nothing. Well, she did exactly as she's trained, and her failure was because of me, not, in the system at the time. Like I said, we were careful to use the dog in the area because we didn't want lawsuits and bad publicity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. What was the? It's such a shallow thinking that two things that come out of this for me. Such a shallow thinking that I'm gonna armchair quarterback even the type of dog that you have, and then your ownership of that dog performed the way that I had trained that dog to perform. And if I had trained the dog a little differently, again, if I had done some different things with it, then it could have potentially shifted the way that it performed. But also, that dog saved your life, right? Because when that suspect, talk a little bit about that, when that suspect hit that dog.
The first miracle that you see is that when the suspect got the gun, he didn't just shoot me right away because she was there giving him a hard time. So he turned to her, struck her in the ground. The FBI, DEA, all the multi-agencies struck that gun 100 times, and it never jammed again. So that was a miracle. If she hadn't have been there to distract him a couple of times, I would have never made it. I didn't buy the dog trained like some of these guys are getting them. They think they're trainers, but they receive a dog that's fully trained.
Yeah.
I was literally doing it from the movie Cops. That's where I learned my canine and police magazines. There was no internet at the time, so
right.
I was going by some old dogs older men that I respected in the industry, and I listened to what they had to say, and it carried me a long ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was the backlash, or what was the community impact of that experience?
Well, they took me to the courthouse where our office was, and as I walked through the courthouse, these are my friends I see every day. We walk, hey, how you doing? We all have coffee together. Nobody would really speak to me. They were all whispering to each other. And I was like, I wonder what's going on. Then I get called in and says, you have the right to remain silent. And I'm like, this guy just tried to kill me. Why are you reading me the rights? So, long story short, they let me go home. Got an attorney friend of mine, very blessed to have him walk by that time, and we reviewed the video, and I saw the 5 rounds fired, and I thought, I told the guy at the scene I shot twice. I told the investigator I shot twice. I'd actually shot 5 times. And there goes the statistic that there's going to be a significant incident in a critical incident that 97% of people will not remember. They don't mean to, but their brain is just not processing it. Sent me home the next day. Front lines of the paper was Officer of the Year shoots teen in the back 5 times.
Holy.
Yeah, so Montgomery, it was 2. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just want to back up a little bit because I want to unpack post incident, because I think this is where a lot of officers, like, they're fearful of that moment. Like, what's going to happen, right? How's my admin going to support me? What's going to happen post this incident? So I think we can learn a lot from sort of unpacking these things a little bit more in depth. So your buddy takes you to the hospital first.
Right.
So you get checked out at the hospital, and then did somebody stay with you during that time? Okay.
My buddy Chuck Weber, K9, he was a street sergeant. The agencies weren't really getting along at the time, but I had gotten along with all the other guys, and he stayed with me the whole time. He took me to the office, took a phone call from my wife. I wasn't able to speak.
So after the hospital, you guys go to the office. This is where you're walking through the halls and seeing everybody kind of, whispering to each other. You still are being affected physically by the stress load. Can't really speak. What is that experience? Where do they take you? And kind of walk through that a little bit more in detail for me, because
They sat me in my office right out. I was in the muster room of other investigative offices in there, and they set me in there, and Chuck stayed with me the whole time. And people tried to come in to speak to me. He was that authoritative kind of guy. He'd like out and let me unpack a little bit. My main supervisor, Captain Odom, came in and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I said, "Did he live? Did he live?" No, he died. And his name was Robert Walker. And all that reality come in. I knew his dad.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh no, I know that kid's dad. And it just started, I could remember start to lose my vision, and immediately going to the worst. I'm going to get indicted by the grand jury. I'm going to, these people at the scene are saying that I was shot him in the back. And when the investigator read me my rights, that's the first thing he said. Now, he was a cop's cop. He was there for the truth. He wasn't trying to make a name for himself. And he said, first of all, I want to tell you, all the shots were fired from the front. And I was like, I know that. Well, why are you even mentioning it? So I was like, something's being told to him that's not true. And so I went down there that night, I shot 5 rounds. Do you realize, Joe, I approached him on the ground. He tried to shoot me again. I approached him with an empty gun. Had no idea. I'd fired 5 rounds. All the gun held was 5 rounds.
Right. It was a revolver. Your backup was a revolver.
Nope. It was a semi-automatic AMT 380 with ball ammunition. Carried ball ammunition because it was winter. It was coming up on winter time, and the clothing was thicker. Had prepared to use the gun, but not in that capacity. Much less from the ground.
Wow. So you're sitting in this office. You got one guy supporting you. Really, it's helping you feel, I would imagine, a little bit more secure. That you have some advocacy there. And the investigator comes in, reads you your rights. What's going through your head at that moment? Like,
I couldn't figure out why. I kept saying, the guy tried to kill me. and then I would say things to him. I would answer his question very bluntly and with a lot of thought. And I remember waking up for years thinking, man, I remember something I should have told the investigator that day. So think about that, guys. If you're giving a statement within hours of a shooting, you're not ready.
Right. How so you're giving a statement. That's what he's in there to do. So I would imagine. How long were you in that room for? Do you think? Do you remember that?
Probably 5 minutes, because I started losing the ability to speak because my brain was racing so much that I would have to ask him to repeat the question, because I was thinking down the road, man, what is my family going to do? I'm going to lose the job I love. What is? I'm going to jail. What's going on here? And he'd ask me a question. Oh man, my brain was on hyper alert. It was still running out of control.
Wow. And so you're in that room for a few minutes. You can't answer these questions. What happens next? Like, where do you go from there?
I walk out, and a buddy of mine from the police department that was my firearm instructor brought me a gun, and my attorney, very high-end attorney, said, your bill's already paid. Somebody from the public's paid it. I said, I'd like to see the tape. He takes me down, shows me the tape, and I saw the 5 rounds, and I was like, I just told the investigator I shot 2 rounds, and I shot 5 times, which means when I approached him on the ground, I didn't even have a loaded weapon. And all this starts racing through my mind. Went home that night. The doctor had gave me something to sleep, which I had never taken anything to sleep. Knocked me out. Woke up that morning with the news media on the channel. They ran on a specific, 12 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and two news outlets were giving me down the road,
reporting that you had, Officer of the Year, which you had gotten Officer of the Year, had shot teen in the back 5 times, which was not true.
Right. So it was a well-known activist, multiple Al Sharpton, those Rose Sanders, those activists had started getting a rally up, and the media is right there in the thick of it, and there's hundreds of people at this rally, and I'm thinking, the guy tried to kill me. Why are they? And they began to say that white Officer Dempsey killed this teenager because of the color of his skin. I had no right to shoot him, and I'm like, that is not true. But they were, 31 straight days in the paper. My guys were working overtime, and all the agencies. I had somebody sleeping on my couch. I had a marked unit in the driveway. I had guys setting up night shift on the porch because of the threats that were coming in to them, much less me. And everybody knew where I lived because the deputy car stayed in the front yard, marked unit.
Right.
So
for a month afterwards, it's essentially still chaos.
Right.
What's happening behind the scenes of that public perception that's going on? What's happening internally at the department?
They're doing the best they can. 8mm was fairly new, the technology, and they were trying to grab photos, and slow motion wasn't even in effect at the time. They were teaming up with forensics. They were busy from sun up to sundown. I had no idea because they weren't allowed to talk to me. They were doing their job, and they were like, hey, we're not sure how this is going to go. So, but I did have a few friends. It didn't matter the color. They showed up at my house on a regular basis and checked in with me. So I had a crack team, really did. I was blessed to be blessed with the support of the mayor, the support of the sheriff. He released still photos to try to calm things, and he actually let them in see the video, and they still said that I did wrong because the color of his skin.
Wow, it's interesting how that narrative can just be pushed in a certain direction, and it goes to this old saying that if you say something enough, it's going to become truth to
That's right.
someone.
That's right.
And it's great to hear that you had that, those fears that you initially had, even during the experience, you did have the support
That's
of
right.
the much of the community, the mayor, the department. So you were on a like administrative leave then for that month, or how long did that kind of take place?
Um,
And um, what was the next steps that got you back into work?
it was a couple of months. The grand jury room was actually under construction, so they couldn't hold a grand jury. The
Oh wow!
first grand jury, they did it like they normally do. One minute they would hear a police officer's statement, the next they would hear about another case, and the next they'd hear about another case, and then they would hear about a witness. And it was so hodgepodge that the grand jury voted 9-9 to indict me. It takes 12 to indict or not to indict. And about 4 months later, my attorney got involved, lit a fire under the system itself. It was flawed. He ended up with a crack forensics scientist called Dr. Larson. I'd worked with him with my cadaver dog, and he put together a stuffed dummy showing the rounds, where they went, how they infected, and which round actually
Wow.
killed. And they took still photos and showing the finger on the trigger, and they did a good job on the second. And there was a new sheriff that just came in, and he brought me back to work as a desk because he couldn't afford me to get into anything else. And it took about a year, and they partnered me with the chief deputy, was Randy Pugh, a very good friend, and we went out within 10 minutes. We caught a burglar. We were in a vehicle pursuit that ran into a propane tank. The guy pulled a gun on us. We took him into custody without any shots fired, and he brought me to the sheriff as the sheriff responded panically to the call and says, "I think he's ready for the streets again, Sheriff." And that's when
Wow. So I mean, again, it goes to show you how you can get into one of these situations, a critical incident, and it can pass. Yours took a year. Some take longer. Some people come right back because that's their policy. And you can get into another one just like that. Just like that. And what was going on for you mentally, emotionally in that year?
I couldn't sleep. It started a problem. The only way I could sleep was to drink, and that ended up being a problem. I started anything to get it off my mind, anything inappropriate, anything to get it off my mind, because I was bored. I'm a AAA personality. I was bored, and I was sitting at home, and I couldn't go out and do what I loved. For the first 4 months, I thought, I'm going to jail. My family
Right.
can't feed themselves. I'd just been married about 4 months. So all that was going on, and I still catch myself 30 years later opening the curtain and looking down the road for an unmarked car to come pick me up for jail.
Wow. Wow. So you are, again, not a character flaw. One is not broken if these things are happening to you out there, if you're listening. This is biology, it's psychology, it's physiology that is taking place. This desire to turn that spiraling wheel of thoughts off. Our impulse control goes down when our stress load is maxed out. That stress load turns into what's called an allostatic load, and it has a detrimental and eroding effect on our ability to make decisions, control our impulses. It hijacks that prefrontal cortex. And it's a normal thing for one to dive into these things that it's not in our character to do, but we do it to shut this thought process off. And so I want people to hear that incredible people can be hijacked by this experience, and it doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you have character flaws. It means that you're not processing it and resetting that stress load and affecting your own biology, which I think, one of the things that led me to develop my tactical resilience system and these operational reset stacks is the ability for one to constantly, throughout the shift, on and off duty, in under 3 minutes, train their nervous system to be flexible. So that
good program. I've followed it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when one then gets into an experience like this, they're ahead of the game. One, they have the knowledge that can mean the difference between them understanding why it's happening to them, and they can interrupt that creep up of those feelings, and they have already started to train that nervous system to be flexible and move into rest and digest more easily, activate fight or flight if need be, but move in and out of those states and be flexible. So about a year that you're in this sort of limbo of 4 months, you think you're going to jail, that probably at some point they say, no, you're fine. Why don't you come in to do like duty or admin work? Talk about that experience of going back out on the street and what it was like for you. What were you thinking? And then I want to circle back for people, and I want you to tell them how you hijacked your own systems and began to heal from that experience.
I was still in K-9. I was still in narcotics. I was always the first guy through the door. I was who the SWAT team would call when they were in trouble. So I was constantly in stressful situations. I remember a couple times thinking, I'm just going to let this guy wound me, and then I'm going to shoot him. Because
wow.
I remember thinking, I've got to do something different. And I slowly changed that mindset. Training, I got better at training. I stayed in shape, went into the military, came back out. They assigned me to a partner. They thought that would cure my problem, so they assigned me to Cliff Roberts, the biggest guy on the department. He was probably with me 3 months, and he shot a guy. So he was out on leave for almost a year. So
wow.
I didn't really get to do a whole lot of stuff. I was well supervised during that time. I kept an eye on him. We stayed together a lot. During this, our families were tight, and he made it through. We both ended up leaving the agency, and we moved to Orange Beach, Alabama, for a better school system for our kids and a better work environment for our wives. And so it took about 25 years before I actually started talking about it, and I got encouraged by the captain with Alabama State Trooper Training Academy. He's like, hey, Packy, come up here and tell me your story. I was there that day, and I was like, no, I got my butt kicked. I'm not. People will pick me apart. I don't want that. And he goes, third phone call, he pretty much ordered me. You will be coming up here. And just his personality. And I remember telling the story and starting to feel some relief because this is what I need to share. My mission is to teach that. They always have me about 3 days before they graduate, when they're all pumped up, ready to hit the street with storm hell with a water pistol. They're all ready. I'm like, wait a minute. This is what could happen due to your lack of training.
Yeah.
And there's a difference in what happens in the real world. In training, it's up to you to close that gap, and that gap is between your ears. Be mentally, physically, and spiritually ready to do the job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's why I talk about in my workshop these 4 domains of wellness: physical, emotional, mental, and purpose driven, spiritual. Some might call that. Some don't align with that spiritual idea. And so it's about purpose. It's about your purpose and your why for doing what you're doing, finding meaning in this life. And so, did you, as you began to share this story, you said you began from the first time you felt some relief from it. Let's talk about that. In that time, that 25 years, I'm not sure if when you were talking about you're starting to do these things, and maybe this is like really post experience, pretty recent to that experience, or close to that experience. You started doing things that were out of your character to just shut it off. How did you transition out of that? Like, how did you interrupt those patterns? What was the?
It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't heal overnight. I began to, have a drink on Friday afternoon to knock the edge off, to a drink every day, to a drink twice a day, to, hey, I'll click on this website and I'll check out for 15 minutes, or I'll make this inappropriate text to somebody I shouldn't have a conversation with. And it didn't happen overnight, and it all came to a head. I almost lost everything, my wife, my kids, and I remember being summoned to the spare bedroom and thinking, this is it, I'm done. And I went and taught that class, and I came back, and building trust back is a funny thing. It takes time, but I didn't get there overnight, Joe, and it didn't leave me overnight, but I began to put pennies in the jar and start a routine. I gathered some men around me that don't mind getting in my stuff. My email's monitored, my phone, my text messages are monitored, how I spend money, the way I don't buy alcohol. And eventually the want went away, and I look back and I go, wow, I can't believe I turned into that guy. Yeah. But the stigma's still there from my family, and so trust is every day, and I'm still building trust back, Joe, and I fully intend not to just survive this. I'm going to win.
I love it, man. And again, it speaks again to your ownership of it. And I think letting the ego not get involved, where, hey, I am okay with somebody being up in my shit about this.
That's right.
And if I want to rebuild this trust over this lifetime and put deposits in that bank of trust every day and build that currency, well, I'm going to do these things. And I'm going to cut through the ego swiftly with this and humble myself, take ownership of my actions, and say, this is what I'm going to do now. Say and do the same.
If I fail, it's nobody's fault but mine. I can't blame this on the shooting. I can't blame this on that or the spouse or the kid. I can't. It's my fault. The reason we got here today, and I am no longer that guy, and I'm not going back.
Well, this is the amazing thing also. Like things in this life are impermanent. We don't have to be so identified with that person that we think that we are. Right? We can shift. We can move and apply new attributes to our life, new habits that create a new man, a new woman. And I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, let alone 6 months ago. We're constantly evolving and creating new experiences for ourselves. And so I think it's super powerful to hear that from someone who's gone through this, put in the work, Packy, this is what
Still
I'm
putting it in. I put
Still
it in this
putting it in.
morning. 5
Get
a.m.
it.
I was up in prayer. I was listening to a Bible
Yes.
study. I was contacting them 5 guys. I
Yes.
walked a mile. I put my gun on. I drew it 10 times. I carry 2 guns with me all the time.
Yes.
You know, it may not be physically on me the second one, but I always carry a gun and I'm ready. I look for that front sight. I look for trigger press. So I'm putting pennies in the jar because it says 100% in all the FBI statistics that sometime in your career somebody's going to try to kill you. It doesn't say if, it says when.
When.
And I am going to be prepared, and I'm going to teach this younger generation, listen to this old dog. This is how I did it wrong, but this is how I righted the ship.
Yeah, this is the action in isolation that I talk about. This is why I start my workshop with a baseline intent reflection. We're going to reflect on your intent to apply these operational reset stacks, to focus on your wellness, focus on your training, improve the things that you're doing through this nervous system management and this the stress load management. Why would you do that? Well, you have to get real clear with your why. The great Jim Rohn says, and I hear that if you're around me enough, you're going to hear me say this quote, and it's from the great Jim Rohn. If the why is big enough, the how is easy. And so you get real clear about why you're going to do the actions in isolation. Why are you going to do dry fire?
Right.
Why are you going to contact those 5 friends?
Right.
Why? If you know your why, then the how, the actions of doing it in isolation when nobody's prodding the bear.
That's right.
To go
Nobody's
do it,
looking but you
and nobody's
God.
looking.
That's right.
Yeah, that's integrity,
Right.
and that's leadership. So now you can take these moments in. Yeah, we want to be clear with our tactics, and we want to be prepared and conditioned for this work that we do, so that we have the energy and capacity and surplus for these, what I call outer ring of wellness activities with our family, with our friends, with our spiritual groups, with those 5 people that you surround yourself with. And man, I'm so inspired by your story, man. And so I think many other people are as well. And talk a little bit about, you share this in a few different capacities, not just in law enforcement, but you're a spiritual guy and aligned with this faith belief. And talk about where you share this and how you've been impacting people.
Well, I teach at the academies. I wrote a book it takes 8 hours to read it because there's so much detail in there that got me to where I was at. My passion is men. I know there's other genders in law enforcement, but my passion is men because they're set up for failure. And I wanted to look ahead that, that penny in the jar they put every day of integrity. Eventually, and it says the devil will come like a roaring lion. He's coming. He didn't say if, he said when. That you're able to pull that huge jar of $100 bills that you have etched in stone, that you will not cross that line, you will not be that person, you will not do this or you will not do that. And the battle's coming. Are you going to be ready, or are you going to just walk away by, I can't stand the term officer survival. I intend to win. I'm coming home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, again, it's the action in isolation that creates these habits. Understanding your why is connected to those actions in isolation that creates that new habit that produces the leadership outcome that you want.
That's right.
And I think it's so important for, men and women to hear these types of stories, and it's why I took this podcast from Instagram Live, and I still do a lot of conversations on live to have these informal conversations. And I took it to this platform where I could give a stage to folks like yourself to share these stories and impact people's lives with their speech. Speech is a very powerful thing, and I think it, the thought tends to lead towards the speech, and the speech tends to lead towards the action, and you put them all together, and you have a powerful, powerful individual. And I think that's what your story shares.
And your brain can process it in a milli of a second. AI ain't got nothing on how fast your brain can, how fast your brain can process the entire incident. And don't come out with a limp, come out with a win.
I love it, man. It's that attitude that one can cultivate and just continue to cultivate. Get the right people around you. Right.
That's right.
What's the thing that you get from this group of 5 guys? Like, talk a little bit about that relationship, because I think it's so important. You hear this a lot in the ether, is that you're the combination of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And so talk about that relationship. I love to hear that. They
all have the same failures I do.
Okay.
They all came from some sort of addict or addiction. They've all came from brokenness, and they all have my values. And I will allow them to say or do something to me that I explained to them in the beginning. I'm going to allow you to do that, so you need to have your act together. And Joe, from just at 5 a.m. to 5:30 in the morning when we're texting back and forth, we can tell in a text message if something's wrong, because we got to know that person. We know everything about that person, all their failures, all their successes. And we're broken in the beginning, but we're not in the end.
Yeah, I love it. This is, I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and he's coming up a few months away from retirement. And he's going from 100 miles an hour to a few miles an hour now. And he can get in, he's thinking, okay, I can get engaged in some activities, but who am I doing those activities with? And
that's right.
I think it's so important to prepare and plan for that. Create some of the experiences that we're having as law enforcement professionals. Create that excitement and that camaraderie and that those experiences into our daily life in a different way. He and I were talking about it, and I was like, okay, we have a small group of people. We can stay connected. Jiu-jitsu is a great way to get that heart rate up, or some sort of martial art that you're going to get the stress exposure, and you're going to feel that, and you're going to be able to have that excitement. You can ramp yourself up to 100 miles an hour for a minute, and or for those rolls. You could do that through a CrossFit type of workout, some activity like that. The camaraderie comes through building a new community. I have a operational retirement community, or operational retirement crew, that is a community of men and women who are 3 months up to post-retirement, so that we can build that community around. So they're not left on an island by themselves.
That's right.
After retirement, because we have so much of a problem where hard chargers, high activating operators in law enforcement come out into retirement, and they don't understand or don't feel supported, and they don't have that connection and community. They've lost it. And now that spiraling thought starts happening. Those inappropriate activities start happening. The ideas that I'd be better off, this world would be better off without me, and I have nothing left here. And so I've started this community for that, to build this connection. And so if anybody's retiring, interested in becoming a part of that, hit me up. DM me, message me, joe@joeswansontactical.com. If you're within 3 months of retirement and you're wondering, hey, what am I going to do when this train when the pulls a parking brake on me.
That's right.
Well, you got a place to become part of a group of individuals who are like-minded. And, so we have the, operational reset crew, and we have the operational retirement crew.
That's right.
And we hit them from the time they come on to the time they are done. So what was that
Well,
like for you? What was that transition like for you, Packy?
I
Coming
went
out of law
wide.
enforcement?
I went wide open, and I was tired of being broke, tired of working 3 jobs.
Yeah.
I had kids in college, and I wanted to better their future by paying for their college. And I built a landscaping company, and it's a lot of work. And I got older and sold it, and I got a very low key job now, but I have to be there, and they expect me to be there, and they depend on me to be there. So I can't. I came from a military family, and I can't leave a brother behind. So I'm going to be there, and that keeps me through the day. Teaching classes, talking about the book, teaching the men small groups. I can really get not graphic, but in their business. There's nothing they ain't tried, I ain't already done. And let me tell you what's going to go wrong. What's in the dark will come to light.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's what we were just talking about. You've built systems and put them in place for yourself because you understand your habits and you understand the rails that you need to stay on to make sure that you're not off course.
And them rails are for your best. They really are for your best.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. What's if this was the last chance you ever had to share some insight with somebody, we don't know when our time is done here. If you had to share one last thing with somebody, what would it be?
I live in that every day. My wife has stage 4 cancer, inoperable, and people ask, "How you doing?" Every day's like Christmas because I don't deserve that day that He's given me, but I'm going to enjoy and take the best away and spend time with her and the kids. And you will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to the level you're training. And that isn't necessarily just down to first responders and military. That's in your life, in relationships. And if you don't, you can't grow on the mountaintop. You grow in the valley. That's where all the grass grows. That's where you're planting and that when you're on the mountaintop, appreciate it because we're not promised that. And the most important thing I take away from this, the last thing I say in the class is, by the way, I walked her down the aisle.
Wow. Amazing, man. What an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing. It's going to impact, and it has impacted a lot of people, your story, man. And you're here for a reason, and it's a big one. I like to end these podcasts on a little bit of a personal note. First question is, and this comes from my history as an artist and as a tattooer. I started in the mid 90s as a tattooer, and I worked even through the time that I was in law enforcement. I put in my paperwork with the Highway Patrol to be able to use that as secondary income. And I found that it was a way, ultimately what I realized, it was a way to isolate myself in something that I found validation in. Now I've done work around that. But I always like to ask, first, do you have a tattoo?
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay. The second question I like to ask, if you had a tattoo, is tell me about that experience. And so for folks that don't have a tattoo, what was the reason that you never got one? You were in the military, you were around it. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Just how I was raised, my beliefs, I don't push them off on anybody. I admire people with tattoos. But I have a daughter that's all into it. And she's pushed me, "Dad, hey, I'd like to get a tattoo." And it would be a picture of a Dogs of Death, an MP, saying that in the military. That was one of my biggest accomplishments in life. I was 30 years old when I went into the military, but I graduated as an honor graduate because I went in there to be the best, absorb. I'm a sponge every day. People are like, you've been doing this since Jesus was a corporal. I understand that, but I still want to know what you're learning, what they taught you. I still want to know. So I just, nothing personal. I just don't have a tattoo.
Yeah, no, I love it. But I love the idea that if you were to get one, this is something from people mark their memories with
That's
these
right.
things. They mark their attributes. They mark their the special things in their life. I'm sure that's what your daughter is doing. She's marking these moments
She does.
in this way. And look, I understand it because I remember my dad. He didn't like it when I started getting tattooed. He definitely didn't like it when I became a tattooer.
Yeah.
But look, everybody has their own place to grow and to be in that valley, and then to hit that mountaintop and share what their experience. And so, man, I so appreciate, Packy, you coming on, sharing your experience, giving people this great wisdom of experience, and transferring that. So, brother, where can people find out more about your book, about where they might catch you live talking about this? Where can they do that minute of push-ups and try to write their name?
That's right. It's called thefastest4seconds.com. I'm on all the social media sites. I love social media. People down me. You spend so much time, but I want to know what they're doing. How I love watching both sides of the story, and so I want to be a sponge. And when it comes to that, so social media is the best way to find me. Very simple. I'm on Google and all those places, and I got a calendar. I actually have somebody else handling the calendar because I keep forgetting things like this. But I'm surrounded by the best, and
I love it.
I've got more plans for more books and more types of training I'll discuss with you later. And just because I won the war, it's time to start preparing for the next one. And my passion is the younger first responders and military and men.
I love it, man. Well, it's a great passion to have, and many will benefit from these moments. And I appreciate it. If you got something from this talk today, go subscribe to the channel, Operational Reset Podcast. Go take a look at what Packy has to say. Get his book. If you're interested in learning about the tactical resilience system and using the operational reset stacks and that methodology to improve your decision quality, reaction time, prevent that burnout that happens so often to officers, go to joeswansontactical.com. You can find it there. And I appreciate everybody. Enjoy your right now. Stay sharp, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Joe. It was an honor.
Yeah, it was mine.